All right, everyone, welcome back to the Soccer Talk Lads podcast, the STL pod. Of course, I am Justin Horneker, as you're used to on these addendum episodes. Here with me, Kenta. Kenta, how do you say your last name? Hagiwara?
Hagiwara, you got it perfectly. Holy.
Oh, nice. I'm so not confident with my pronunciation.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Kenta works with me at Area Sportsnet. Kenta, where else can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. That's the place I guess I'm most active on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kenta covers Cincinnati, so had to have him on to kind of get some insight on what St. Louis City are up against this week. Cincinnati having just a fantastic season so far, top of the Shield standing, and not to say that this was a surprise because I think the pieces were there last year, but they've definitely taken that next step. It seems.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been a pleasant surprise, I think, to a certain extent. I don't think fans were expecting this kind of
Yeah.
start to the season. We had a horrible start to the season last year too. I think opening match we lost 5-0 in Austin. And it was one of those like, oh, are we having one of these seasons? And they turned it around the second half. So weren't sure what to expect at the beginning of a season. But it's been a pleasant surprise for sure so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that, like at least from my viewpoint on the outside, is like Pat Noonan comes in, and not to say it was like an instant turnaround, but definitely seemed like it righted the ship in a way that it wasn't before. Like I think we talked about before, Kent. I've always been impressed with Cincinnati, and that even in the years where there wasn't any hope, like fans are still out there and like desperate to see good soccer. So like they definitely deserve Pat Noonan in that way.
Yeah, no, the fans they're always out, man. They're just always supporting, even being 3-time wooden spoon winners in a row. They're always
Yeah.
supporting. So yeah, they
What
deserve this
was
for sure.
what was the biggest impact? Like obviously Brenner is a big talking point, but I think like as a team, it's been so much more like conclusive and so much more like
Ooh,
well put
yeah.
together.
I think when Obina and Wilbodo came in, I think it was like late April last year. That's when the team started to play better. He kind of settled that midfield. We didn't have a true number six in that midfield before then, and kind of bringing him in, and then Miazga came in during the summer window,
Mm.
and those two kind of really solidified the team defensively. And you're seeing it now. They're 5 clean sheets in 7 matches
Yeah.
starting the season, and they aren't scoring the goals. They have like 9 goals to start the season. I mean, it's not particularly so that enjoyable to watch in that aspect. Bastard and Brenner each have 1 goal to start the season in 7 matches. It's not what you expect. But yeah, defensively they've been so sound where it's difficult to score on them, and that's contributed a lot to their success so far this season.
Yeah, that was definitely watching the games this year. It's like, okay, this looks like a team that can just shut you down in a way that they haven't been able to before. Would you say is that more personnel or is that more like formation that they've been running out this year?
It's the same formation. It's the same personnel as last year. Besides, Yerson Mosquera on the center back line. Um, Realistically, I mean, he came in from Wolverhampton on loan
Mm.
this past winter, and he's been very enjoyable to watch. But I think it's more of having Miazga in the center, and finally he was on the left side of a center back trio. Um, Last year, and him controlling that defense, having an extra year of experience behind Celentano, having it being a second year in MLS. I think all those pieces definitely help the team succeed for sure.
Nice. Yeah. So they usually come out with like a 3-4-1-2 essentially, and with Miazga
Yeah,
in the center. And like, I think that'll be interesting to see how St. Louis lines up. So obviously the big talking point last week for St. Louis, they come out with a five in the back for like the first time that didn't
yeah,
use wingers. And I see them definitely going back to more their 4-4-2. That's been working out so well for them like throughout the early part of this year, especially
right.
with those wingers. Like if you were to say, I think we saw it a little bit in the Fire game where Cincinnati were kind of exposed defensively a little bit. Like, what are the areas of the pitch that like are kind of their weak points in that formation?
Um, it's the midfield. Like Acosta, sometimes when he drifts really highly, he doesn't really play a true position. He's a 10 that drifts a lot.
Hmm.
So when those two midfielders, especially, I don't think we had Obina and Wobodo in that game. So it was, I think it was like, or no, we didn't have Acosta in that game. So it was um, a start of Marco Angulo in the midfield, and we're going to see something similar because I don't think Acosta is going to be available for this match either. Um, so when that midfield gets disconnected, there's a lot of space for teams to be able to play in transition, and then you can get good numbers sometimes if those wing backs are pressed really highly, like Barrier, when they like to play offensively, they can press pretty high, play pretty high. So you can get really good numbers against Cincinnati. That was that Chicago game where I think Chicago scored 3 goals against us. So that was the one defensive game that didn't go well. So
Yeah, 3-3. Like Chicago is such a weird team too. Like I just don't know what to make of them this year. I want to say they're terrible, and then they have these games where they come out and score like 5
yeah,
goals.
right, yeah. They haven't been able to close out games because they were up 3-1 on us in the 80th minute, and then Acosta came in and then gave up 2 goals in 10 minutes. So
cool, yeah. As a St. Louis, and I can get on board with that at least. Kenta, there's a lot of history between Cincinnati and St. Louis soccer. There is a article from, I don't know if it was post-match, someone put an article about how the first matchup between a professional or like a first flight St. Louis and Cincinnati team took place in 1923, and like to have two like storied soccer cities. If you look back to the USL days, like STLFC and FC Cincinnati had some bangers. So it's nice to be renewing that rivalry in a way too. Like, what's the kind of the viewpoint in Cincinnati as far as St. Louis getting back into things?
I think St. Louis is still definitely the new kid on the block, but
Yeah,
fans in Cincinnati, we're well aware of St. Louis from other sports. Whether it's baseball or with the Cardinals and the Reds.
Yeah.
There's certainly a rivalry there.
There's some history.
So I don't think it's anything new in that aspect. And right now, there's that kind of mentality within Cincinnati where it's like we can beat anyone. So it's just another game for a lot of fans, and it's an away game. So they're just excited to get another win, hopefully.
Gonna be fun. So you touched on it a little bit. Acosta and Brenner seem kind of banged up, at least from practice. Is there any clarity on that, or is it still kind of questionable for both of them?
Yeah, it looks like Acosta's not going to be playing. He hasn't practiced at all this week. He looks like he injured his shoulder. They said they were going to get a scan. I haven't really gotten an update on that, but during the penalty that he drew against Philadelphia last week, so he probably won't be available. And that also goes for Brenner. He wasn't practicing today at all. So just based off of that, the best case scenario is he's, possibly available, but I don't think he would be a starter really in any capacity. So you'll probably see Sergio Santos get the start up top alongside Vasquez. And in the midfield, we'll see whether that's Angulo or Pinto, or if Kubo hasn't practiced, so he probably won't come back, but someone else takes that number 10 role. But Obina Nwobodo was practicing full team with the full squad today, so he'll probably be available. We haven't seen him in 2 weeks, so cool. I guess there's some silver lining.
Yeah, I always hate seeing, like, obviously from like a homer standpoint, you want to see the other team a little bit weakened, but like from a competitive standpoint, like wanting to see good soccer, like it always kind of depressing when like a star player like Brenner or Acosta isn't available. St. Louis had Jabulu Blom go down. He's out 5 to 6 weeks now. So like both teams are a little bit hampered. Obviously Blom's not the caliber of Acosta or Brenner, but both teams operating with something missing, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, I'm excited to see this game, Kenta. Thank you so much for hopping on, talking a little bit. What's kind of your outlook for this one from a Cincinnati standpoint? Yeah, like how do you see them kind of coming into this game and attacking St. Louis?
Well, without Acosta and Brenner, it's going to be even more difficult to score goals. They've scored 9 goals. I don't think they've scored a single one outside the 18. They've just not been really creating a ton of chances, and they haven't really been finishing them either. So I would expect them to play more defensively in St. Louis. They have their full back line, and they have Obina Nwobodo back, right? So I would expect them to focus more on the defensive aspect of the ball. But to the point where maybe Raymond Gaddis, the veteran, starts over Santiago, and he's available as a midfield replacement because we just don't have the midfield depth right now. So maybe he becomes a sub to play one of those holding midfielders. We saw that happen once, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it again. We just haven't put the ball in the back of the net enough where you lose Acosta, you lose Brenner, and it's like where the goal's really going to come from. And
you look a little bit frustrated by it. Yeah.
I mean, coming into the season, you expected more from Vasquez, Brenner, and Acosta just at least start the season. 7 games, Acosta has a goal and 2 assists, and Brenner and Vasquez have a goal each. So
Yeah, it's a good point on
it's
Vasquez because he was such a
yeah.
force last year. To see him like not finding the back of the net yet is alarming in a way.
Yeah. So we'll see. Santos has more goals than any of them with 2. So him getting a start might be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I don't know where the goals will come from necessarily for
Yeah,
this match.
it'll be interesting. Like St. Louis hasn't scored in 2 games either. I feel like that the Minnesota game, like Minnesota just were able to like defensively stifle them by keeping everything compressed and not allowing them to open up the game at all. And then in Seattle, they kind of played like they definitely played like Seattle, trying to stop Seattle versus like trying to get anything forward. So like from a St. Louis standpoint, it's gonna be interesting to see offensively like what ends up happening. Like they definitely need to get back to how they were playing earlier in the season, but this is also their hardest stretch of games. These 3 games of the season, a lot on the line, at least in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you go to Seattle, they were playing, they were in such a hot streak. You have to go win game planning against them, not necessarily playing your style of, soccer. And you played, it was a really good 60 minutes. And then once that first goal came in, it kind of just crumbled. So I guess that maybe Pat goes aggressively early on to try to find a first goal to see what kind of reaction St. Louis takes from that based off of last week's performance. But we haven't found the goals, so I don't really know if that's going to happen.
2 teams looking to score. All right.
Yeah. It might just be a case of first one who scored to win, just win the game. So
I kind of like I almost see this game as being like similar to the Chicago game, in that like, or Cincy Chicago game, I should say, in that like both teams are probably gonna try to open things up a bit, and like you get into that transitional offense on both sides. And like I think you probably look at this being a pretty exciting game.
Yeah, no, it should, 2 top of the table teams. Yeah, that's always exciting.
Always. All right, Kenta, thank you so much taking time on your busy day to come talk with me. Again, you can find Kenta's work at Area Sportsnet. You can find Kenta on Twitter. Kenta, what's your Twitter handle?
It's Kenta Hagiwara. Yeah.
We'll post in the show notes.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah.
All right, Kenta, thank you so much.
Of course.